Go to you too. I was stuck outside of Laverne for 2 hours. It was not.
When Mr. Commissioner Gooch is settled in, I'd like to call the December 19th Health and Ed Committee to order. Welcome everyone and Merry Christmas. I think we have one more meeting Thursday night, I believe. Property management is my last meeting. We're getting there, guys.
Not one, two. We have public safety tomorrow night.
Public safety tomorrow night. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Oliver,
Present.
Commissioner Davidson,
Here.
Commissioner Wilson,
Here.
Commissioner Boyd,
Here.
Commissioner McMurray,
Here.
Commissioner Gooch,
Here.
Chairman Dodd.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Vice Chair Wilson, have you had a chance to review the minutes?
Thank you, Chairman. I have reviewed the minutes from our last meeting. I find them to be in order, and without objection, I would move for their approval.
We have a motion and a second. Everyone approves, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Vice Chair. No one signed up for public comments tonight, so we can move beyond that item. Mr. Byron Cumby, Health Department, and thank you for being here tonight. We could have probably given you a night off, but I definitely wanted to hear the Health and Ed, or the Board of Education activities, so thank you for being here.
Yes, sir. My pleasure to be here. I'm Byron Cumby, Director of your Rutherford County Health Department. Your health department does continue to do good work for the people of Rutherford County, and we are proud to serve. You should have our November outreach report made available to you electronically, thanks to Ms. Rachel. In keeping with our mission to protect, promote, and improve the health and prosperity of people in Tennessee, as we protect here in the first column with our disease intervention efforts, immunizations, and our environmental health inspections. We promote there in the center column with our health outreach, diabetes outreach, and community participation, vital records administration as well. And we improve with our primary care services, dental services, WIC, family planning. All these programs do appear to be on track and performing as expected. Seasonal respiratory illnesses are circulating in Tennessee, and we have seen a rise in outpatient visits in influenza-like illnesses. However, our COVID-19 status in Rutherford County remains low according to the CDC's hospital admission metric. There is a small cluster of counties in the farthest eastern region of our state that are considered high. High is more than 20 admissions per 100,000 in population. We do continue to offer free COVID-19 testing to the public by appointment through our health department clinics in Murfreesboro and in Smyrna. The federal government has reopened the test kits by mail program with 4 rapid test kits available to every household at covidtests.gov. That's covidtest with an S.gov, or at 1-800-232-0233. That's 1-800-232-0233. And we do again encourage our residents to request those at-home test kits from the federal government. A positive rapid test kit can let you know what you're dealing with right away and enable you to call your doctor and request antivirals within that initial 5-day window that is recommended. The Tennessee Department of Health does have a community support hotline that's available to take questions about COVID, the new COVID vaccines, or the flu vaccine between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Central Time. And that phone number is 615-770-6940. That's 615-770-6940. We do have the Moderna vaccine available for COVID-19 at your health department. We do continue to have the Pfizer available for pediatric patients. The RSV vaccine is available by appointment. Anyone interested in the RSV vaccine can contact their health department, pharmacy, or primary care provider. In speaking of flu, the flu shots are currently free and available on a walk-in basis in both of our clinics from 8 to 10 and from 1 to 3 Monday through Friday for anyone 6 months of age or older. And it may be getting a little late to build full immunity before the Christmas gatherings, but still plenty of time to do so for New Year's Eve and for the coming months. And we also recommend the tried and true wisdom of our mothers and fathers, because it still works, to wash your hands frequently this time of year, cover your coughs, and of course, stay home when you are sick. This time of year, we do like to remind everyone about 988, which is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It offers 24/7 access to trained crisis counselors who can help people experiencing mental health-related distress by simply dialing or texting 988. And just a note on our holiday closures, your health departments in Murfreesboro and Smyrna will be closed on Friday, December 22nd, and Monday, December 25th for Christmas, and then again on Friday, December 29th, and Monday, January 1st for New Year's Day. And, Mr. Chairman, that does conclude our report.
Thank you. I glanced at the community care minutes, and they just had a bullet point of RSV and strep outbreak in Rutherford County, and you had alluded to some cases are up. Any other
We have seen
commentary on that?
some reports of that. There was a 5% rise in reported outpatient visits for flu, influenza-like illnesses. So that may be flu or something very close to it in December. Fortunately, there have been 0 pediatric influenza-associated deaths in Tennessee this season. There have been 14 reported nationwide. Outpatient influenza-like illnesses, which would include RSV, in the Mid-Cumberland region currently is considered moderate. Shelby County is considered very high, and that does raise the level for the state overall. So that is something we are keeping an eye on, and why we do have our recommendations of course, protecting yourself against all respiratory illnesses.
Thank you. Commissioner
Director.
Oliver, I see your mic up.
I was going to ask a question regarding that metric as it relates to incidents, because when you look at your influenza, COVID, and even mentioning the RSV, what is considered high? Is that number high, moderate, low? What number or incidence rate is considered high, medium, or low? And is it the same for each of the infections?
I think the reporting on that depends on the positivity rates or on test results. So what we tend to get a lot of is initially the influenza-like illness report. And so that is that 5% rise that I was telling you about. I would have to dig a little deeper in that to see, what the trailing indicators were of the specifics of those illnesses were. But right now, just as a combination, we feel very fortunate that we do have these vaccines available for all three. And so our best course of action is just to promote people to utilize these vaccines. We have seen a somewhat of a decrease in that, and that could be all kinds of factors there. But the availability of those really do give us confidence that we are prepared to meet the need.
Just another question relative to vaccines, because the RSV vaccine is kind of new, right?
Correct.
As is the COVID. So when you're looking at the vaccines that are being required for infant to, 12 years old, whatever the case may be, what is the likelihood that those will be instituted as a part of that vaccine survey?
That's something, of course, right now they're recommended. I don't know that they would ever be outright required. That would be something, CDC and Department of Health Human Services would probably, come to a determination about, the FDA, but they are recommended vaccines because those are illnesses and pathogens that are particularly dangerous for the very young. So.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I will entertain a motion to approve the report.
Motion to approve.
Second, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Mr. Cumbie.
But Mr. Cumbie, real quick, I have a quick question. In regards, I know the Tennessee Department of Health has reminded Tennesseans regarding the the lead poisoning linked to the applesauce products.
Yes.
Have we had any cases here in Rutherford County in regards to that, or not?
Not in Rutherford County, but in Tennessee, there was one case reported of lead poisoning in relation to that recall.
Okay.
And those are cinnamon apple.
And applesauce, the
Applesauce.
one banana, all that stuff? Okay.
Yes, that are available at, retailers. And so that recall went into effect in October. It was just a reminder now that some of that is still out there. They do recommend if you have that in your home, just to dispose of it.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thanks, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Cumbie. Community care report, the minutes are on the SharePoint. Nothing really jumped out at me. I just will comment, Charlie Teasley's been appointed to the board. Looks like they have a new member. And the board also recommended adding 2 or 3 positions, so I'm sure next month we will hear what those positions might be. There were no questions on the special projects report. I know that we'll continue to scrutinize that report, so by all means, look over that this month, and if we have any questions for Mr. Smith in January, we can cover those then. So no special report tonight. Which leads us to the Board of Education. And I think that we will entertain your amendments to the budget first. I see Mr. Trayley's here as well, so we have something to do with the grading package, perhaps.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Chairman. I'm Brian Runyon, CFO of Rutherford County Schools, and as the Chairman was saying, we got Trey Lee, COO of Rutherford County Schools here as well, and he probably will be answering one of your questions regarding one of these amendments. But Chairman, I wanted to ask before I did this, there's 3 different amendments, and they're all regarding the General Purpose School Fund. Do you want me to read them all individually and vote on them individually, or do you want me to read them all at one time and then vote one time?
Individually.
Okay. Okay, so this first amendment we got, like I said, comes out of the General Purpose School Fund, which is our Fund 141. And what this amendment does is to increase Fund 141 budgeted revenues and expenditures, as well as decrease fund balance to move money that was donated in FY 22-23 and FY 23-24 to the fund to fund the supplies and materials for the implementation of chess in Rutherford County High Schools. The total amount of money moved from fund balance is $5,300. Revenue will increase $1,100 for the current fiscal year. These amounts equal $6,400, which is the increased amount of budgeted expenditures and supplies and materials in the GP budget. The funds will be used to purchase chessboards, set pieces, and clocks. Have any questions?
Questions on that? And because there's such a wide variation in dollar amounts, I thought we would split them. So we can entertain a motion on the $6,400 amendment to create chess clubs if one wishes to consider.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner McMurray,
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Oliver,
Aye.
Chairman Dodd.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Continue, please.
Okay, for the second amendment, this is also the General Purpose School Fund. This amendment is to increase Fund 141, General Purpose School Fund, budgeted revenues and expenditures in the amount of $429,168 to recognize the awarded State Special Education Pre-K grant for FY 23-24. The funds will be used for additional educational assistant positions to assist in the pre-K classrooms and additional training for teachers and educational assistants. Rutherford County Schools has 22 integrated preschool classes across the district that serve over 300 students. The monies afforded to us by this grant will ensure that all students will have access to highly trained teachers and staff to meet their educational needs. And it doesn't say this on there, but there is no local match required.
So educational assistance, and I see the line item is $280,000. How many employees will this?
The average for an educational assistant is about 25 to 30,000 per year. So somewhere around 15 to 20 additional education. Professional development for the pre-K teachers.
And so those assistants will be scattered across the 50 schools?
Across those 22 classrooms that
22
do
classrooms,
IPKs.
thank you. And those will hit the budget in future years? Since this is a grant, they'll be full-time?
They will be, but as this one is, from what I understand, this is, it's not, they haven't said for sure it's reoccurring, but it's just one of those state IPK ones that, we'll pick up the rest of it with voluntary pre-K if it comes down to that. Right now, it's going to be for hiring those educational assistants, but we're not sure that, under the circumstances, it's just. I assume it's going to be one of those that's going to be somewhat real.
Any questions for Director? Yes.
Yes, Chairman, I do. It's actually related to what you just said. The original budget for the year was $400,000, so this more than doubles the appropriation for that. And you're hitting on the question I think probably most of us have. If this is not a recurring grant that comes again next year, is this something you would eliminate this to go back to something closer to the original? Because we're talking about doubling the budget. So is it something you're going to ask for in new funds to continue? Or is there a willingness, if that grant wasn't re-awarded, that you would actually cut this? We had a meeting last night about the possibility of how we manage money and cut funds. So I'm asking this question because it really is important.
Be honest with you, as far as that grant goes, I can't say for sure whether they would cut the positions. I'm pretty sure they will, but here's one of the things that I will say. Our budget every year continues to increase with voluntary pre-K and IPK. So with that, again, with the growth that we're being funded through TISA, I'm assuming that TISA will be covering majority of those positions if we do continue to keep them, but I am not sure whether they're under the contract or under the assumption that, this is for as long as this grant exists, and then we will cut the positions. I can't say for sure because I'm not over the IPK department, so they did not say one way or the other whether this was something that we would continue to pick up in general purpose if this grant did.
I mean, obviously, this grant money is something we're going to use. Obviously, we believe in the programming. The question is simply because if this comes back to us with our next year's budget, just putting it out there to the public, this is grant money. If it's not recurring, we have to make some tough choices if we have a revenue issue, so.
Mr. Gooch?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. On my iPad, it's kind of cut off, and I'm trying to kind of go back and forth. So is it for $429,168?
Correct.
And it's just for pre-K?
Yes, it's for your IPK, which is for your special SPED pre-K students.
And is that 22 classrooms?
That's to spread those educational assistants over 22 classrooms. I mean, they already have some educational assistants in there, but there's also probably going to be more created because we continue to get an influx of those students. So,
do we know how many positions this grant will have, or
I'm guessing based off of what they have budgeted there's going to be somewhere between 15 to 20 positions, because those positions usually generate at about $25,000 to $30,000 a year, depending on experience.
Any other? Mr. Phillips?
Mr. Chairman, just one follow-up. Recurring expense, if them as such during the budget process.
We would probably add them into the budget process as growth positions, because we would be picking them up, and we would probably include them as growth positions, so they would be reported in the budget when we present it to you.
We're expecting that grant to continue, though, but if it does not,
exactly,
be made crystal clear that these are in essence new funded positions that were previously funded by a grant.
Correct, and I would love to say that I know for sure that this is a reoccurring grant, but I can't say that for sure because it's state funds, so it's not federal funds, it's state funds. So if it was federal funds, I would say it had a better chance of being recurring, but since it's state funds, I am not sure. Also, with that said, I can't say for sure because they haven't said whether if it's not funded next year through the state grant, if those positions will be cut. I would assume that would be the case, but I don't know. I can't say for sure because that has not been decided yet. And we may have enough money from TISA to be able to pick these up next year if the state does not fund them. So.
Either questions or a motion for or against?
One more question. Maybe I missed it. Did you say how many educational assistants this would fund?
With 280,000, that probably funds about 15 to 20 educational positions because you're looking at $25,000 to $30,000 per position.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve this as presented.
Here, a motion and a second. No other discussion. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner McMurray,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Oliver,
Aye.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Chairman Dodd.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Continue, please.
Okay, so the last amendment we have is for coming also out of 141. On Tuesday, November 28th, 2023, Purchasing and Engineering and Construction received bids for the mass grading portion of the site work, and that site work is at the Beatty property where the elementary school is proposed to be built. All bids have been reviewed, and Engineering and Construction recommends demo plus grading base bid for a total bid of $2,790,600. Engineering also recommends requesting contingency of $250,000 and an additional architecture fee of $600,000. All requested funds to be included in the final request for the complete project at a total of $3,640,600. And that breaks down as the design fee being $600,000, the site bid at $2,790,600, contingency of $250,000, and again, the total request is $3,640,600. Engineering recommends motion to approve the request by the Board of Education and forward to Health and Ed for a request for funding in the amount of $3,640,600. This request for funding will require an amendment from the general purpose school fund balance. The amendment will decrease the account $39,000, which is our unassigned fund balance, and increase the account $99,100,590 transfer to other funds as presented. And any questions, I'll try to answer, but if not, then Trey is here to answer these questions.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, I was going to have Trey come up. We had a conversation last night, and it helped me personally asking about this. Well, my question to Trey was just for everyone to know, obviously, we've had conversation about an elementary school on the Beatty property. So I asked Trey, obviously, this is a full job of clearing off the entire Beatty property, which would also be in anticipation of a future middle school as well. So I'm just going to have Trey just let everybody know what the full result of that job would be that we're voting on here tonight.
Thank you. I would also like to offer a slight explanation in why we're requesting the money out of 141. Typically, when we come before Health and Ed at this point, we're requesting the funding for the whole project with something that's going to be funded through a bond, through our borrowing situation. In the past, we've been able to build our elementary and middle schools at about 12 to 13 months. Our construction durations have grown exponentially due to supply chain, labor issues, and things like that. And it's taken more along the lines of 17 months to do that now. In conversations with Michael Smith, when we were talking about borrowing and when to borrow and how much to borrow, we are trying to fast track this project as much as we can to get out ahead of that 17 months. So what we discussed was putting out a mass grading package, which is what this is. It's basically the entire property, which is for the elementary and the middle school, which we would, normally it would be all encompassing in that one number that we bring before you, but we're splitting this part out. What this does is, the rest of the project went out for bid last Friday, and we won't have bids until January the 18th, which means it's the end of January before we come back before this body with the rest of the project, and it's February or early March before I can start with a contractor to get started. It's a wet time, and it's kind of condensing that 17 months. In doing the early, what we call an early package, the mass grading, we're getting it out front. We come before this body now, the others early January, which allow us to start in February, which gives me 2 months ahead that we can get grading done. We can get our detention ponds and our stormwater detention areas installed, and we can actually build the pad where for the structure of the elementary school to sit. This money will be part of the overall project. It's not additional funds. It's just, normally it's not split out like this. So we split it out. The county's, I call it Michael, county's not looking to go for funding till a little further into the spring. Our ending fund balance is in a pretty good situation, and Michael's recommendation was that we could use some of that ending fund balance to fund this portion of the job, to get it started quicker. So that's why we're taking the money out of 141, that we're starting the project early, which has given us a jump start while the rest of the project is bid. Then all of that comes back to this body again. Another different factor in this particular request is the $600,000 for architectural fees. Normally, we would have architectural fees or a project of this size somewhere around $1.5 million. When this project was started, this body authorized the use of some special projects money to get the design started. There was an allocation approved of $900,000. The architect at this time, their fees are based on design and then project management once the project starts. Typically, it's 80% for design. Once a project goes out for bid, they've reached that 80% milestone. Because of the scope of this project, we've exceeded the original $900,000, I'm sorry. So to get them to our anticipated fee based on what we anticipate the construction to be, this $600,000 pays them the rest of their completed design fee. They'll still have the 20% that we will hold, that we will utilize during construction. So it's a little bit odd, being completely transparent. We're bringing the numbers before you, and the whole intent is to get us a jump start on this project. And if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Quick question
Mr.
about
Oliver.
the design fee, please, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Okay, you said this is 600,000 is in addition to the 900,000,
Yes, ma'am.
which means that the design fee is now 15.
Half.
Well,
Yes,
yeah,
yes, ma'am. 1.5 million. Yes, ma'am. Total.
And that increased why?
We made a stab at getting the architect started with a fee 7, 8 months ago for $900,000 to get the project started. We anticipate the project being somewhere around $60 million. At their present fee, $1.5 million is about 80%. So we're just asking to get the rest of their money. They've already completed the work. We just didn't have enough funding in place. And since we were asking for this funding for that, we rolled it in together to go so that we can pay them complete.
Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, great plan. Time is of the essence. That's a real estate term we use all the time, but I can't imagine that applying any better in this case. This is a great plan to not waste even a matter of days. So good plan. I think it's great. A couple things, and I want to clarify. Trey opened up the door for some questions I'm going to have later. Have nothing to do with you, kind of. But let me confirm a couple things, because you mentioned fund balance and healthy fund balance. If I'm reading this correctly, decreasing this $3.6 million or so, our amended fund balance is going to be about 110. Is that right? I want to be kind of specific. On here I'm looking at, after this request, if we do it, once this money is moved, our amended fund balance is at 110 million. Is that right?
It'll be close to there.
So just so everybody knows where we're at, because we're going to keep talking about what the fund balance is as we continue these conversations. After this request, we'll be at 110. The total amended budget is at $523 million. So let me give you some percentages. That means that our fund balance will be, after this ask, at about 21%. Okay, so that's an important number, and this is why. What did we say our absolute number is we want a healthy stay at? Is it 15%? We can never go below 15%, right?
State law is 3, but we don't want to go below 15 in talking with our county finance director.
So I'm just keeping that math with everybody. After this request, we're at fund balance to actual current amended budget, 21%, because we're going to have some further conversations about a land purchase. And when you do those numbers down, I did these today, this afternoon, real quick, and we're getting around 17%. So that's my questions in just a second, because we got to keep our eye on how close we're getting to a danger zone. But as far as this amendment, if no one has any questions, we could have it anymore. If not, I'm going to make a motion to approve this as presented tonight.
Second.
A motion and a second, and I'll open the floor for questions, because I just wanted just a couple of general ones. Who is your design engineer? For the site that,
Large Coffin and Associates,
and then therefore, who is the architect they're working for?
Goodwin Mills and Kaywood.
And the
civil engineer of record is Barge Coffin and Associates, and the architect is Goodwin Mills and Kaywood.
and your $1.5 million fee to architects and engineers looks to be about 2.5% of the 60 million. So that's a normal number that y'all use, something in that 2 to 3% range?
No, they're usually 7, but our architect's working for 4.75%.
And your 1.5, will it go up as the project continues?
Once we get the bid, we will finalize that last number.
It may be the 4.7 when you're done.
That's correct.
Very good. We have, Mr. Gooch.
Just a few questions. On the contingency, and I'm just curious, how do we come up with that number?
Our past experiences, to be perfectly honest. Typically
There's no formula, it's just what?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And it's based on what we consider our exposure to something unforeseen happening. And normally when we come before you with the overall package, we have some contingencies built into the bid. I don't have that yet. It's not part of this package. I didn't put any contingencies into this package. I just wanted the raw numbers. But if we don't utilize that, it will roll into the overall project, and I'll reduce it when we come back. That number will be shown. If we don't use that in this package, I'll reduce our contingencies in the bigger rest of the project by that same amount. And that's why I broke it out. I wanted to make sure all these numbers are transparent, and this is something we've done in the past, and I want to make sure that they're there again.
Sorry, I came in. I was being dad for just a couple minutes watching a basketball game, so apologize for that. But one thing I want to keep in mind to kind of address that question, this is a different way of doing it, but it's a way for us to get further ahead and use our fund balance instead of having to include that into the whole purchase. So I'm sure that they went over that, but that was a new way of doing it for us, being able to use the funds we already had.
And Trey, Mr. Gooch, that's 9% of the hard cost bid, which I think is reasonable in our industry.
And I wasn't questioning the amount. I was just wondering how we come up with it. And Commissioner Wilson, I think you answered one of my questions, is that after this transfer, we'll be at 21%. And so my question is, we just accepted a grant of $429,000. Does that, by increasing revenue and our budget does not reflect anywhere on this 21%, on the percent.
It would for the time being, but this is a one-time grant, so after that, it won't be. So if you...
But we don't factor that in at all.
I wouldn't, no.
Okay.
That 21% is still extremely healthy, and I know we talk about not getting below where we want to. 15% is still extremely healthy. And I do think we have to recognize our former finance director and our superintendents and school boards for doing that, because that is a very healthy fund balance.
And the past budget committee members also.
100% the past budget committee, yes.
Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. And call the roll, please.
Commissioner McMurray,
Yes.
Commissioner Oliver,
Aye.
Commissioner Boyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Chairman Dodd.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. So that concludes the budget amendment portion, I believe, correct? Thanks, guys. Thanks, Mr. Lee. BOE update or enrollment update, if you want to flop those, but
Yeah, so just a couple quick things. BOE update, we expect to see enrollment decline just a little bit in January because we have early graduates. We are still funded for those students, so when I bring you an enrollment report, we're at 50,900 roughly K-12. It'll probably drop to about 50,500, but we are still funded by the State Department. It's called Move On When Ready, so we still get funded for those students. So don't be alarmed. Our January enrollment dropped just a little bit, but I assure you it will catch right back up by the time May gets here. The other thing, I was asked last time about our CTE programs of study, so this is a copy of the CTE programs of study. We are one of only 3 districts I knew of at the time. I'm sure there are more now with the extra in TISA, but you see we have our clusters right there, so all the way from advanced manufacturing all the way down to STEM, and that lists for you all the different schools that we have them available in. And we try to continue to work with our principals, honestly now work with space and see where we can fine tune and add programs as needed. We use U-Science and work with Rutherford Works. I sit on the executive council for Rutherford Works, and we look at our U-Science data to truly see where our programs need to be, along with Commissioner McMurray sits there on there as well. So that's our CTE portion. I checked today also to follow up. Siegel Middle School does have a full-time SRO back assigned to them, and the Laverne Middle bathroom should have been taken care of if they have not been already. So that's kind of what I have from the enrollment update. Last thing, if you're all right, just giving a general update.
yes, sir.
So you are going to see on Thursday, the State Department of Education is going to release letter grades. There's been a whole lot of controversy around letter grades. So what do I mean by that? Every school in the state of Tennessee is going to be assigned an A, B, C, D, or F. What is unique in this is this law passed in 2016. Due to COVID and testing issues, it hasn't gone through. You are going to find that Rutherford County Schools, I can't share the data yet, but we did very well. I don't think that's going to come as a surprise. What is the most concern for me, you are not going to see Rutherford County Schools celebrating our data yet. The reason we're not celebrating it, it's almost like a little silent protest. That's the best way we know how to do it. Normally, you are given how you're going to be graded the year before you're actually assessed. So for this current year, our kids will take TCAP in April. We should have known this past July, how are we going to be assessed and what are our targets? That not only is not in fact the place for this year, we don't know how we're going to be held accountable this year that we're currently in. The new A through F system is being put in place on last April's test scores. We got the A through F test scores on December 12th, so last week, and then an hour later we got the rules for how they came up with them. And so we're doing a little bit of a silent protest, even though we performed well, we're glad we performed well, but we didn't know what rules existed. Where I think you're going to hear a lot of attention is in rural Tennessee, where you have schools that for generations people have gone to, and now all of a sudden their school is a D or an F because the targets didn't exist. We've tried to simplify it by saying it would be very much like having a football game, and you play the football game, and then 9 months later you get the results based on rules that didn't exist. And That's truly how we're operating. So you're gonna be very proud of the work that we did, very proud of our school scores, but it is a backwards way of going about knowing what your goals are. So just wanted you all to hear that. Our board is aware. We have a statement ready. We're not just drawing battle lines with the Department of Education, but just about every superintendent in the state of Tennessee is not very thrilled with the lack of transparency and communication. Okay, that makes me feel, honestly, that makes me feel a little bit better. I don't know that it should, but it makes me feel a little bit better. Yes. Yeah. Glad that helps. So.
Thanks for remembering that.
So happy to answer any general questions.
I have a question about something that I guess we didn't cover. I guess this is an update. Fund 141 General Purpose School amendment regarding maintenance of plant maintenance equipment.
Where is?
Is it on the SharePoint of tonight's
It
agenda?
is. And we never did get to it. I was just going to ask a quick question about it.
You know the title of the document?
I'm looking for.
Under DA 5 and 6 PDF.
Dr. Sullivan, here's that's 4, 5, and 6.
Trying to find the exact one, sorry. All right, under BA 4, 5, and 6, which line are you on?
The very last document.
The maintenance of plant administrative equipment. That increases.
It was saying there was an error originally, and I was just kind of, I guess, trying to get a better understanding of that.
Yeah, I have a comment on that, Dr. Sullivan. So last month, we received the $2.3 million safety grant, 2.361940 safety grant. The line items we received had a typo where they included a $1,361,940 item that wasn't in the total. It was a line item they had copied and pasted into our amendment, and the line item didn't exist. It was an old item.
So this is just to note that error.
Correct.
And to correct it.
Correct.
Is that what's going on here?
Precisely.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And I thank you for reminding us, because I had to dig through that one and go back through the minutes to figure it out. So thank you.
We discussed it.
We did not discuss that here. You did last month, but on our SharePoint, the 1.3 plant maintenance equipment was just there, but it wasn't in the total.
Gotcha.
And the hard copy you sent out was correct, but our SharePoint was never corrected. Thanks for catching that, Commissioner Oliver. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. I promised to get us out of here before Christmas. That's for Commissioner McMurray. I do have a couple questions. Actually, Trey said something, and I kind of want to enter that a little bit, because this is my concern going into 2024. Going into our next budget season. He mentioned the word timing, and we're doing something new here for timing purposes, to get things done and not hold things up. That's the imperative conversation for me. So I'm not even sure that we can answer this tonight, but I would like to end up, Chairman, if you may help me, in some form of a request. With Michael Smith not being here, I don't think I'm going to be able to get an answer tonight, but I think I want to put a question out there that's going to help myself and all commissioners. We really have to talk about the timing of the money you're going to ask for. The 5-year plan, I'm sure everyone noticed that over the, between now and the June 2025 plan, that's the $419 million, okay? That includes the elementary school on the Beatty property, a middle school on the Beatty property, land purchase for the north end, the Laverne High School addition, and a high school on the north end. So that's what we're dealing with as far as the request. I think we've all seen that the timing of when we pass things and the timing of when we go and actually to the bond market to get the money, this is going to create a real conundrum in the timing, because I heard the superintendent actually say the timing of the middle school will impact the current past rezoning plan that you just did a month ago. So my alarm went off in my head, like, wow, there's a potential problem, and I wrote it down immediately so I would not forget that. What I'd like to start tonight, not finish because we can't, I want to start a timing discussion, and we'll have to get the finance director involved since he has recommendations on when we go to the bond market and how we get money. The elementary school obviously has been talked about for a long time. That's the number one thing on the list.
Come in January.
And I'm just going to, and you're coming next month with that, and I'm just going to keep rounding up numbers. So, I'm going to say 70 million for that. Oh, if you want to interject, please.
Real quick for timelines, because I don't want anybody to be caught off guard by that. So and Trey may have gone over it. When do the bids come back in? The 18th. We have a special called meeting, so it is going to be right before you the day after our board votes on it. That is not a normal process. Normally there's a lot of time, but for timing wise, it will come before you the day after our board votes on it, just from school system to health and ed.
Okay, so we should go ahead and be thinking about this elementary ask. I'm glad we're discussing. I'm sorry, Chairman, you had something to say, sir?
That's the Beatty hard cost.
Yes.
So there's 70 million there. Next thing I want to talk about is, and I'm just repeating what I've heard from the BOE meetings. Obviously, the search for land up north, that's a 3-alarm fire, correct?
Correct.
And the current plan would be, if you find that, you had mentioned using your funds to do that. Is that right?
Yes, for the land.
From
yes.
141.
Yes.
I'm just trying to get a game plan for everybody. I like the football analogy. Let's go with a game plan.
Or a portion, depending on, because if we can avoid sharing a percentage with the city, we may end up using more for the Beatty Elementary and then go to the bond market for the land. So that's a conversation Michael Smith and I have had. Some combination of Beatty Elementary and land will come out of
So there's some combination of funding to make it work out for the best results. Let's just say 20 million came out of 141, however it came out and went to wherever it went. I'm just keeping everybody together on the fund balance. If they took out 20 million, that brings that fund balance to 90 million. So this is if they purchased land and the cost was 20 million, just for round numbers. Our fund balance is at 17%, 17.1. Okay, that's where we're at on fund balance, and that's with them purchasing the 20 million bucks for land without us kicking in additional funds from the county funds or any type of borrowing. So there's where we are on that.
Percentage was what? 15 or 17?
17.1% would be our fund balance based on this new amended current budget of 523 million and some change. Just trying to keep everybody like the heads in the game. This is for myself out loud so I can keep up with it, but I just want to share that with everybody. I like to make the math simple. So we're looking at a $70 million approximate ask in January. We need to think about that now. As far as what that would be borrowing that money, I know we've already made some plans in debt services. We knew that was coming. But just so everybody knows, that's probably in the $4 to $4.5 million annual payment for 20 years mark. That's kind of where we're at on current interest rates. The Laverne High School addition. Now here's where my questions start, and this is what we probably need to finish in January or so, and this might need to be in a form of request for Michael and Dr. Sullivan to do this together. What would the timing be on the next three is where I'm going. Yep. Laverne High School addition, the middle school on the Beatty property, and then, of course, once purchasing land, we haven't purchased land for the north, but we have to go ahead and discuss funding for building the high school to get a plan together. Timing of when we actually have to put that through the commission to approve it, and the timing of when we go to the bond market, if we all had clarity on that, I think that is going to make decisions tremendously easier. It'll definitely make discussion easier because we can look at how that affects where we're going to be in the end of this next year's budget, and then if we carry over something to the next year's budget, now I'm going into the 2025-26, will that have a result that makes you have to do another rezoning and it blows up the county a second time? And am I asking those questions clear enough? Because there's like 5 things that are, okay.
Yep. Laverne High School, our board should approve. We did an RFQ for architects to make sure we were getting every architect that we needed. RFQ for architects went out. Our board just approved it. And so our board should have new fees structures to approve at our January meeting. As soon as we get those approved, we've already asked those companies. I envision us looking at sending out the Laverne High School in February possibly to be able to get an idea for bids. Middle school would probably be right behind that as well, so that we could hopefully come to the commission and ask for Laverne High School and Beatty Middle School in April.
Okay, so I'm going to take $20 million out of this because that's something that can possibly somehow creatively come out of 141 in various ways. 70 million for elementary, the Laverne addition about 50 million, so we're at 120. And then you would say now we need to fund the middle school. We need to be talking about that in this coming budget.
Yep.
All right, so 120 and then 90. Is 90 still pretty close to what we're thinking, Trey? That's what I had on. Is that about right? I mean, I know we're just talking, okay. So 70, 50, 120 plus 90, we're at 210. So if that would be, is it fair to say if we split it up, would 210 be the working number for this budget? And then, now I'm just asking, if the high school, which is $190 million? Uh-oh, he's wanting to say something. Sure.
Yeah, he doesn't like my timelines, I know.
I just want to leave tonight with a generic kind of timeline after last night's meeting of how we would have to approve this stuff.
So this is where Michael Smith really comes in. We would ask for the approval. We wouldn't need the 210 right away. We would need the design fee for the architects, which is going to take 6 months. So if we start that in February, and I'm doing round numbers like you, we're in month 8 before it goes out for bid. So we're in month 9 before we have a bid. It's still this physical year, but it may be after January before you would need to borrow the money for the construction. And I don't know how that plays in with what Michael does. That's where you're right, we need to have the conversation with Michael to look at some of that for y'all. But the answer's yes.
Thank you. I know I sound like Rain Man because I'm trying to project the next 30 months in my head, and every time I do it, the question I can't solve because it doesn't make sense to me is the suggested timing from our finance director on when we get the funds. And it's almost playing beat the check. We have to time everything so on the approval plus design, we're obtaining the actual money at the time we need to actually buy construction materials and pay bills. So, Chairman, help me do this. I'd like to make a request, and it's going to really need to be a meeting really between Dr. Sullivan, possibly Trey, and Michael, because what I'm asking for is a little guide, one sheet for commissioners that take care of this full 2 years of request, the full $419 million. And I think we couldn't be getting something better after our discussion last night, because here's the thing. We do not know what kind of help we may or may not receive from the state. We have no idea. So the way that I fund my personal life is I do worst case scenario, there's no one to help me but myself. How would I pull through? Number 2, at least if I know those numbers, I have the absolute worst. And then as I can get help, and I get Christmas money from Grandma in the mail, I can go, there's a little bit of cash I have, I don't have to fund, and start doing the math. But if we don't know how bad it could be if we're by ourselves, we don't even have a starting number. And we're almost, to me, having discussions and arguments, and no one even understands what the bottom line is. So I think this is possible. To me, in my mind, with the right people, this is a 1 hour, 2 hour conversation. I don't think these are big numbers, but it's only a few line items to say what's our timing. So I think this is fair to ask for this, and I would like it next month, because I think if commissioners are talking about voting on an elementary school, it'd be nice if we're looking at a full projection of this and discussing it as soon as next month. Is that fair? Can we do that?
And to give you a perfect example, Commissioner, so you're exactly right. So we always are told we need a 5-year plan that doesn't change. And this 5-year plan necessarily didn't change. We asked for the elementary school in our 5-year plan last year, so we're not there yet. So it's bumped a year. The Blackman High School addition has been removed from this plan. And so the only thing that's changed is the high school has moved up a year. And the reason I gave you that February and April timeline is because those conversations have already started. And so we absolutely can have that, no problem.
So the cheat sheet would be when we would go to bond, when that debt service would need to be on the budget. Is that the
Absolutely, sir.
I think Commissioner Oliver had a
This is
question.
even before debate. If we would, this isn't about us
Have the cheat
deciding to
sheet.
do it or not. This is if money was absolutely, completely growing off trees and we funded this, how would we fund it? And then look at what, hey, if we have to approve it approximately in this month to think about that this is the best time to go to the bond market. And then these guys are like, hey, I can start doing excavation during that time. That's the type of great planning that I believe we can do pretty quick. We got some really smart people, so I think y'all can put this together, and it gives the full commission, to me, a real good picture of what everything looks like. And now while we're talking about all the other county needs, which are many, you've got the school, the biggest portion, right here at your side going, hey, I know how these guys are looking at what they're going to ask for. Now we're talking about public safety requests. We're talking about requests in other committees. It would help me do the math quickly. So that's my request.
And the principal and interest, what dollars
Absolutely.
hit
It's
the
got to be what
budget?
the payment looks like it
What
would be. Worst case scenarios, we're on our own. What if we funded it all ourselves? Actually, that would be a great piece of paper to share with everyone, including all of our state delegation, to say, look, these are real numbers. All information does nothing but empower us to know exactly what the reality of our situation is. So I would love it, because I'm not writing down on my pad anymore. I'm actually looking at a sheet saying, and I believe you that this is what you need for 2 years. So like when we do this work will be something we're working towards for months. So it's like a couple hours to set up what we're doing, give us plenty of time to be proactive. And I think that's what I'm going for.
And I think we can have that for next month, and it'll be a conversation with, just to clarify, but again, we want principal and interest. What's the cash out of the county coffers? What month will it go to the bond market, and then what month will that start hitting?
Yes, sir.
Over the next
What do
couple
we
years.
imperatively need to approve this June for next year's budget? And then what can wait till the next year's? Can the high school say wait till the next year? This is what the money looks like, so we'd know what we're looking like in the budget for both years. Because you'd have to agree on this document. Here's what's great. We're up front with everybody. You can say our rezoning plans that have already been discussed will work with this. And here we go. We're working together. We got a 2-year game plan that's already got the rezoning done. And the funding need, at least, I'm not saying approval, the need matches it, so if we can figure it out, you don't have to do another rezone, and then we try to make that happen.
And I would just, we're talking fast, a lot of numbers, but I would want to understand the impact on the fund balance as well. I think we need to be very cautious. We're approaching the 15%. You alluded to the fact that we may need to hit the fund, may consider hitting the fund balance to do architectural fees 16 months from now, 14, whatever. So let's.
As a matter of fact, yes, Chairman, you're absolutely correct, sir. And we're at 21% fund balance right now. So just think, if they front the $20 million for the land, it's knocking them down 4%. We're at 17. Now, everything else you're planning on will be you guys doing that 20. If we don't like that, well, we have to add that to the ask. But if they're going to find a way to do that, then their ending fund balance is 17.1% next to amended budget, and then they have land. Okay, and then that land is in place for this future high school. So, am I missing anything, or is that comprehensive enough? I think that gives us, starting right up front, how we, because I think the biggest thing everyone's going to say is how do we split it up? And we split it up without another rezoning is everyone's already upset. Let's not do it again. And you'd go, this works. This timeline works without doing it again.
My only concern would be by splitting it up, I feel like it is maybe an unintended consequence is us saying we need a middle school before we need a high school. I can't argue we need a middle or a high school, we need them both. So by splitting it up over, that would be my only caveat I'd want to add up front, is that we are not saying we need a middle school before a high school. We're just saying timeline-wise.
Well, why not produce the plan both ways? I mean, it's no different than your options for this. I mean, either way, we have an idea of what we're doing. I think just do both and just flip it. The numbers are going to be similar. I mean, the number's still huge, but yeah. So do I need to do anything more than just request it? Is that good? Okay.
I think I'm clear that we can have a conversation and produce a cheat sheet. And I think I'm clear on what that, I think with Trey's input on start dates, and we'll get with Michael too, I think we can achieve that for whenever our meeting is in January. We'll have to clear that up in a minute. And thanks for that. There was a lot going on right there in that conversation, but I'm good. Hope you had your hand up a moment ago at the beginning of that.
I just want to clarify. It's 419 million, correct?
419 million, yes,
My
ma'am.
colleague said billion. You were really excited, and I just want to
Billion.
make sure that it's millions. Right. Thank you.
Oh, no, million. I was probably mumbling, talking so fast.
I was going to say, who's on first? I mean, you
I
said
mean,
you
you
were
come up
doing
with a
Rain Man.
billion, we'll be great too. That'd be wonderful. 419 billion.
So if I could I just take us back a little bit? We got this rezoning documentation last month, and we really didn't have a lot of time to look at it. And so while Phil was going all, about the numbers and things, it kind of went through my head that I believe you said last month that the Roy Waldron Annex, that we wanted to close that down and turn it into more of an alternative school. And while we have such high numbers on that end of the county, is there not just anything else we could do with that school? Even CTE program would be better. Like, I was looking at the numbers for Smyrna West, and I think is it Daniel McKee, and they roughly 56 and 49 for the enrollment. And well, I mean, I guess that's an idea that we could put them into this school. We know that it's structurally sound, but it needs a lot of love on the tour that we went through. And I feel like there has to be a better solution for use of that school, because it does hold such a large number. And I believe I talked with Tammy at one point of she was looking for a location for CTEs, maybe warehouses. Would that not be a better solution?
With all due respect, no, I disagree. We are struggling mightily at the elementary level with behavior, and we're also struggling with special education behavior. We right now are outsourcing special education behavior to Rutherford Academy. We're spending a fortune doing that, and the services aren't what we would want for our students. The best way for me to say that.
Okay.
We are looking at, I believe they have 21 classrooms at Roy Waldron Annex, so we would look at moving our behavior classrooms that we have at Cedar Grove, Walter Hill, and Plainview, 6 classrooms over there. We would then look at moving our middle school there that has the behavior classroom, and then we would have 1 classroom for every grade level 1 through 5 for alternative school. Right now, when I have a student who makes a threat at the elementary level, I have nowhere to send them. And I'd love to tell you that doesn't happen, but it happens. And right now I can move them around a little bit into a different school and hope that environment doesn't increase. I can try to put them at the virtual school if the parent agrees, or I can kick a 4th grader out of school, which I don't like kicking a 4th grader out of school. The other part that we have in the north end, yes, we have a ton of seats, but we also have John Coleman sitting with so many open seats. Even our current rezoning leaves them with room for about an extra 250. I'm most concerned about Laverne Lake right there. That's the school I'm most concerned about, that we may have to go back and look at moving a little bit more of Lake Forest over to John Coleman to relieve of some of that overcrowding because they're a large ESL population. So I definitely understand what you're saying. From an operational standpoint, that is our biggest fire that I've got to figure out a way to put out, because we lose teachers, we lose staff, and then we lose public trust if we don't take care of discipline, and I don't have any way to take care of discipline at the elementary level right now. Sorry, but yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Davidson.
I had another question.
Yes,
Was it someone
always.
else? Okay. Relative to the whole alternative school piece too. What type of training are our teachers getting relative to behavior management? Because we can't just send your behavior problems away. We need to look at the professional in the classroom and what kind of training and support they're needing to keep the children in the classroom.
Yep, so a combination. We are now working with Vanderbilt, so classroom, it's comp training is what it's called. We have our behavior interventionist and then our behavior EA that works on that comp training, and then they're tasked with going back and trying to train the entire elementary school. It's not where it needs to be yet because this is only year 1.5 of doing that. But that's the basic behavior model we're looking for, is the behavior comp. The other portion we're going through, and this has been new because we didn't have to focus on it as much as elementary, is just going back and re-educating what our code of conduct is, of what is the appropriate behavior, what are the consequences. I think that was shocking for just us to realize, parents, students, teachers, and even administrators. Secondary school, that's your daily language. You were in that code of conduct nonstop. You're not at the elementary level. And so that's been the other portion of that focus. So.
And I did have a question relative to the whole rezoning piece. Did you all take a look at expanding virtual school as a way of opening seats at the brick and mortar?
We did. Our virtual school enrollment, especially in elementary and middle school, has actually declined quite a bit. We're below 350 students. We capped high school on purpose at 200. You will find across the state of Tennessee, most virtual schools do not perform very well. Ours performs exceptionally well. I believe it was the first level 5 virtual school in state of Tennessee history, and you can connect that level 5 with what you think the letter grade may be, and that'll be all I say until it's unembargoed. But when we're looking at it from that standpoint, elementary and middle, we don't necessarily want a lot of our kids in virtual, we want them in person. And then at the high school level, we notice that kids start to decline, and so high school is capped. We could probably open up another 25 to 50 seats. Elementary and middle, we're struggling to fill those seats right now. And it's declining every year, unfortunately.
Mr. Phillips.
I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but we've got an extremely important meeting coming up with our legislative delegation to the steering committee on the 10th. The thought that's running through my mind is that this game plan of expenses could be done before the 10th, and we could pass that information out with an explanation, like from Commissioner Wilson. It would just add additional information for those guys to have when they consider our request, the resolution that we sent them. Is that too much to ask?
School system can do it as long as the county finance director can. I think that's a yes. We said yes. Everything's great.
I really think we can, Chairman.
I don't see it, yes.
I think we can create a scenario, a hypothetical cheat sheet on, again, principal and interest when.
Michael, we were just talking about a couple of option sheets
I'll
that.
update it. We'll get him updated.
Yeah, looking at the $420 million ask from the school board, just for over the next couple of years, how we would split that up, and just what it would look like with the annual payments. Just a simple sheet on how we went about it. Stuff we talk about every day. The finance director says we don't have the money, and I think we're close to adjournment after that, sir.
School system would like to say I have no more seats.
So the request is to be ready prior to steering and have that as a visual, Chairman Phillips?
Yes.
Yeah, the cheat sheet, okay.
I'm not sure the best way to disseminate that information, but I've never heard as many figures come out of one mouth as I've heard come out of his mouth the last 3 months. So he would be the perfect person to confuse the heck out of our legislative delegation. I take that back. He'd be the perfect person to explain what that spreadsheet is all about and what we're facing, and just give them additional information to consider as they are also considering the resolution that we passed last Thursday night.
I would agree with that, because if we come up with a way that over the 2 years, what the 2 years would look like, what we need, and it works with rezoning, it's a more realistic, even more detailed what we need right now and what we're going to need the next budget year. So we're making those requests as detailed as possible. Thank you for that.
Yes, you may.
I walked in late, but I want to make one comment, because I want to keep in mind, if you do a cheat sheet, which I understand the point of what you're wanting, but I don't know that you're going to accomplish what you're wanting with that. And with that being said is, the schools send over, they pass a 5-year plan, and, eventually that'll come over here for a formal request at some point. But I want to keep in mind, even for this elementary school, that I think is probably the very next request that would come in January, February, I'm rounding here. I don't plan on borrowing for that until October. Now, but what
That's what we want on the sheet, is your best guess.
But I'm saying after that, there is no best guess after that. And let me explain why. So one of the things we look at is some arbitrage calculations and how long we hold on to the bond proceeds, because it's a whole one thing of what you authorize to borrow for. It's another thing on the actual dollar sitting in an account that I'm spending. And so to avoid arbitrage and avoid paying money back to the IRS, it is a very convoluted tracking spreadsheet with different investment accounts that we're moving money around. So what I'm trying to say is the money I borrow in October for that elementary school, the physical dollar that we borrow may not actually be spent on the elementary school. I may use some prior bond proceeds. I don't think we can even get what you're wanting because there's so many moving pieces to the bond proceeds. Only thing I can get out is 1 year in advance, is what I'm saying. Like, I couldn't tell you when I would actually go to the bond market for a future middle or high school, which I think is going to be on their next year to year and a half request. That's going to depend on market conditions, how much bond cash I have left from a previous bond issue, a number of other, those are two big factors. But it could depend on several things. So I can't provide you of the month or the time that I would go for that next borrowing, because it may be that it's more advantageous for us to do a bond anticipation note or a tax anticipation note based on market conditions or based on their cash flow needs, right? Because if they go, Trey I know is going to need site survey money today. He'd have it today if I could get it to him, right? But let's say that we have to do geotech and stuff like that, and they don't need money for this long, and I can use some other cash flow areas. I just don't think we're going to be able to get you what you're looking for as far as the day we're borrowing, other than I can tell you I would prefer not to borrow more than once a year as a general rule, but that's not absolute. And I would prefer that we borrow based on market conditions. Now, again, that may dictate that we borrow twice in 1 year. I would prefer not to, and I would also really prefer not to borrow in June or July because of the bandwidth, the amount of time it takes up to do a borrowing and a ratings call. And so, because keep in mind, we're issuing large tax-exempt debt with rating agencies. You know, I'm coordinating with offices out of New York or different places like that. And so I just want to be clear on kind of what you're asking for. I don't know that I can say, when would we go to the bond market for a future high school? The answer would be, I really would have no idea.
So, okay, right. Let's just do the best we can just to get something together. I like everything you said is something I like to have in print. Like some notes that say, hey, bear in mind this and this, just so commissioners keep that. Because let me say this. For instance, it helps me to go, if we need 70 million elementary, 50 million Laverne High, 90 for the middle school. If we started there, 210. You said right now we can kind of think $75,000 for every 1 million. So I'm going to say 210 million on 75,000. That's probably 17 million bucks, right? Somewhere around there.
15.7.
Okay, 15.7. So see, we people can think, okay, if we split it up, at least the roundabout numbers are, if we could split it up, we think this is kind of a plan. I can immediately go, that's 10 pennies based on around the current penny. It's anything to help people keep it in their head, just where we're doing it. It doesn't have to be specific like that, but those things you said have helped me. Like, hey, we may approve it now, but I'm not going to get the money for 6 months, and so on and so forth.
But I guess what I want y'all to understand is their 5-year plan is what helps me. I will work on the back end based on a lot of factors. That really isn't going to factor in on when again, they're going to come in February. Whether I borrow in October is not going to be based on what y'all vote. Y'all are going to be based on, can I afford this much bond debt on a yearly basis? And then I work on all the calculations. Do we do level debt service? Do I forego principal for 1 year? Do I do a 20-year bond? Do I do a 19-year bond? What would help me as far as borrowing, looking at pennies, is look at their 5-year plan. Do you want to do the bond debt for that? Because the rest of it's a cash flow game for me as far as getting them enough cash flow and time in the bond market. If we only voted off when I was going to go to the bond market, we would almost never get anything. I think it's going to be more complicated is what I'm trying to say.
Well, anything we can do to just get our heads around whatever numbers, whatever we can do, just as proactive as possible is all I'm saying.
I think
right now we don't really have anything. Let's do something, at least split up what they're kind of looking for. At least, if we did in a couple of years what we're looking at, we know, hey, this budget season for the next 6 months, we're looking at this $210 million. We're okay, and we've adjusted that if we did not worry about $190 million for a high school, we don't need to worry about that for the next 6 months. We can worry about that in the next budget year. That's the type of question I'm saying for the commissioners. If we could at least split where we're all in agreement that we're in the ballpark, that's what I'm asking for.
They have that on their 5-year plan. I think that's what you're looking for, because I can manipulate a bond issue, and I say manipulate as in not as an illegal way, as in we can forego principal for 1 year. On this recent bond issue, we had enough cash flow. I wanted to go ahead and make a principal payment in this year we borrowed. Went ahead and we're going to make one in April, a $5 million principal payment on the high school debt we issued. But I didn't have to. We could have forgoed that and done a 20.5 year if I didn't have it. Let's say you wanted to approve it this year, but you were going to potentially have to raise revenue or taxes or whatever, something comes through with the legislature in the next budget year. I could have pushed off that principal payment. So that's kind of my job is to figure out the cash flow needs around that. It's easier for me if y'all just, as you vote and go, hey, I know they need a high school. We're okay with the debt service of $15 million in your example. Michael, go figure out if you're going to borrow this year or next year. That is easier for me than it is to try to put it on a piece of paper. So I think it'd be better if y'all had the 5-year plan of the schools in front of you and maybe disseminated that to the state legislature. That's really the decision this body and the commission has to make is, do you want to service the debt? Do you want to build another high school? I will work out the timing of the logistics of that, because it's definitely not something I can put on a one-pager and it's going to change.
Over the short term, I think we can at least get together and talk about this and at least try to give whatever information we can to everybody on what we think the timing might be for the ask. How about that? Like tonight, it was cool to hear you're coming. When I say cool, I mean I love the transparency. Needing hundreds of millions of dollars is not cool, but saying you're coming in January for elementary, I'm coming around April for the middle, we just need all this information as easily accessible as possible for everyone.
Yeah, let's keep this brief. Let's.
Middle and the high school will probably come in April, both of them. So.
And so I think we can, the professional language, professional requirements, I think we can, for me, just speaking for me, dumb it down to let's pretend what's going to happen this year and what's going to happen next year. And I think we can, okay, I think we can get there, Commissioner Wilson. And thank you for that. Any other business? I have one brief item, but any other business? Thank you for being spontaneous, everyone. Thank you for having an opportunity to speak on your rezoning. Thanks for bringing up the budget items. Thank you for that. If no one else has anything, the only thing I want is I would like us to consider moving our meetings to room 205. I don't like being in this position physically above y'all. I don't like the formality of this. I don't know if we're in any COVID restrictions or the sound in that room may not be as good, but we've met in that room for decades and decades. So we're at a table on the same level. It's a little more formal. You're okay? We may not can do it with IT. They said the sound's not good, but they can maybe work on that. We may have to find a better microphone. Do y'all need to think about that? Rachel needs to post the whole year soon. So I don't want her to post we're there and then have to move it back here. But technically, we want to declare. Carl? Bill? Laura? Ms. Oliver?
I'm cool with it. I was just wondering, is that contingent upon how many visitors we may have? Because, we tend to have some hot butt issues from time to time.
I think if we do that, we could just pop in here. Okay. Just the logistics will compel us. But I've seen 30 people in that room. Chairman Phillips, do you have any heartburn on that?
No, you're the chairman. You call wherever you want to. I like this room simply because it adds consistency from one committee meeting to the next, and it's plenty big. I like this room, but I will acquiesce to anything that you guys come up with. It's your call, your committee, your call.
What I think we need to have, if you have enough time, I didn't spring this on you, I would want a motion. I would entertain a motion to move to room 205 and do the will of this body. Do we have a second? And a second. If it doesn't work, we'll just eat crow and move. Pop in here, and if for any reason, so I have a motion to second. Any further discussion? Granted that we can come back here if this proves to be short-sighted or a failure. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Would you please announce?
I think the next meeting is on the 23rd, if I'm not
The
mistaken.
next meeting is January 23rd at 5:30 p.m. in room 205 of the historic courthouse. I'm going to make an executive decision to adjourn. Merry Christmas, everyone. God bless. We're adjourned.